Before we begin, please note that this episode discusses medical assistance in dying, MAiD, suicide, disability, chronic illness, and end-of-life decision-making. Some listeners may find these topics difficult or distressing. If you're struggling, feeling overwhelmed, or worried about yourself or someone else, support is available. In the U.S., call or text 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 988 in Canada, the Suicide Crisis Helpline, available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you're listening outside the U.S. and Canada, please contact your local crisis line, emergency service, or a trusted healthcare professional. Support services vary by country, but help is available in many places. If you or someone else is in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number right away. Now, on to the episode. What can the debate around medical assistance in dying teach us about disability, healthcare, housing, and multiple chemical sensitivity? This episode features two conversations. The first is with Professor Heidi Janz, a disability ethicist, writer, and assistant adjunct professor at the John Dossiter Health Ethics Center at the University of Alberta in Canada. The second is with a Toronto woman living with severe MCS who is friends with Sophia. Sophia was a 51-year-old Toronto woman living with severe MCS who received medical assistance in dying in 2022 after years of being unable to secure housing that would not worsen her illness. Sophia's case attracted international attention and raised difficult questions about disability rights, housing, healthcare access, and the choices available to people living with chronic illness. Medical assistance in dying, or MAiD, became legal in Canada in 2016. Since then, eligibility has expanded significantly, and Canada now has one of the world's most permissive assisted dying frameworks. Similar laws exist in a growing number of countries, including the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Spain, New Zealand, and parts of Australia, while other countries continue to debate whether assisted dying should be legalized or expanded. Professor Janz was in contact with Sophia during the final years of her life, after Sophia asked her to help raise awareness about her situation, assist in finding suitable housing, and keep people informed about her decision to pursue MAiD. For nearly 2 decades, Professor Janz has studied disability ethics, ableism in healthcare, and the experiences of disabled people within healthcare systems. Her work examines how assumptions about disability can shape public policy, clinical practice, and conversations about quality of life. Together, we discuss how Canada's MAiD laws have evolved, why many disability advocates have raised concerns about their expansion, and what Sophia's story may reveal about gaps in housing, healthcare, and disability supports. We explore the barriers people with MCS face in finding safe housing, accessing healthcare, and maintaining their health in environments that may worsen with their symptoms. We also discuss broader questions about disability rights, autonomy, dignity, and what meaningful choice looks like when people cannot access the supports they need to live. Please check out and share a link to the podcast's new website. It's listen.chemicalsensitivitypodcast.org. It's easy to find. It's an easy way to introduce friends, family members, healthcare providers, researchers, policymakers, and others to conversations about MCS. And please subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more, follow the Chemical Sensitivity Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok. And you can reach me at aaron@chemicalsensitivitypodcast.org. Thanks for listening. Welcome, Professor Janz. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Obviously, this is a sensitive conversation, and I wanted to invite you, perhaps, if there's anything you'd like to say to listeners before we get going.
Just the topics we're going to discuss today include MAiD and suicide. And so, if you need help with your mental health because of anything we're going to discuss, I urge you to call the mental health line.
Thank you so much. And I will share that number in the show notes for listeners. Professor Janz, not all listeners will be familiar with medical assistance in dying. Many listeners are in Canada, and many listeners are in the United States and in other countries. And I wonder if you'd like to say maybe one or two things about MAiD.
So MAiD was first legalized in Canada in 2014, but for people whose deaths were reasonably foreseeable. 2020? In 2020, just a minute, was expanded to include people with disabilities and illnesses whose death was not foreseeable. For disclosure, I'm a disability rights activist. I've been thus for most of my adult life. And the position of the majority of disability rights activists until people with disability have free choice in where, with whom, and how they live. The so-called choice to die can't be considered a free choice. So that's very much where I come from.
All right. Thank you. You've written about ableism in healthcare, and I want to know, how can assumptions about disability and chronic illness shape the way healthcare providers think about quality of life and end-of-life decisions?
Well, a primary characteristic of medical ableism is the assumption that having a disability automatically meant that the person has a low quality of life, unhappy with their life. So this can lead to treatment not being offered. It often leads to something called diagnostic overshadowing, where a new symptom is automatically attributed to the existing illness or disability. So when that happens, things go undiagnosed and unexamined. So, which can lead to bad outcomes for the person.
Yeah. I want to talk more about people with MCS, please. Many people with multiple chemical sensitivity, as you know, struggle to find safe and affordable housing and difficulty accessing health care because of exposures to fragrances and cleaning products and pesticides, cigarette smoke, building materials, and more. And I wonder if we think about healthcare and governments, what kind of responsibility do they have to ensure that people with MCS don't face these barriers?
Under the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, government have a responsibility to ensure that people with disability have access to the things that they need to live, to survive. For people with MCS, that includes access to safe housing and safe environments. The problem is, even though Canada is a signatory, they tend to ignore those commitments for all disabled, including those with MCS. So, so it's a very disheartening situation.
Thank you. Many people with MCS are forced to live in environments that make them sick, and they're not able to access the support they need. How does that change the way we think about MAiD?
Well, I mean, especially for people with MCS.
For people with MCS, when they can't access safe environments, they're not able to survive. When someone chooses MAiD, those circumstances, I would argue, it's not really a choice because they aren't being given the opportunity to live a dignified life.
Mm-hmm. Professor, you've written about the story of Sophia, a woman with MCS who sought MAiD in Canada after being unable to secure safe housing. And this is a case that received widespread media attention. Are you able to, for people who aren't familiar with Sophia's situation, just tell me a little bit of the background information?
I believe Sophia was 53 when she died. When she reached out to me, she had spent 2 years writing local, provincial, and federal government officials explaining her situation. She lived in a small apartment. She had people smoke there, and cigarette smoke came through her ventilation.
Mm.
And COVID exacerbated it.
both the physical and psychological
Both her physical and psychological health were rapidly deteriorating. The plead for help, find a safe environment. She had a network of people, including her doctors, trying to advocate on her behalf, but nobody could get anywhere. So she made a decision to end her life by MAiD.
And what was Sophia hoping to achieve with your support? Was it to find healthy housing, safe housing?
Yes.
Yes.
And
in the end, she asked if I could continue to tell her story in the hopes that other people wouldn't have to make the decision that she did.
What does Sophia's case reveal about the gaps in our housing, healthcare, and disability support systems?
It shows the gaps. It reveals the resources that our society provides are sorely lacking. She's one of the fiercest activists I've ever met. Advocate that I've ever met. In the end, she just got tired. She kept pleading for help. She had door after door slam in her face. So in the end, she quote unquote chose MAiD. But she didn't have anything to fight with anymore. And before she died, she sent me a letter thanking me for my efforts to try and save her. And I've kept the letter, and it's taped on the wall beside my desk to remind me exactly what's at stake in this work.
You have expressed concern that MAiD is expanding in a society where disabled people still struggle to access housing, healthcare, and adequate supports. Do you see this as an urgent issue, particularly for people with MCS?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. If anything, supports are constantly being clawed back. And in the case of MCS, as I understand it,
many people still have trouble convincing doctors
they still have trouble convincing doctors that it's a real thing. Despite
all the medical evidence.
Despite all the medical evidence there is. So it's absolutely an urgent issue.
Professor, when people who do not have MCS or may not be familiar with the condition read stories like the story about Sophia and the very critical situation she was facing, that led her to make the quote-unquote choice to offer MAiD, what do you think they're missing? What do you think the general public should know about the situation many people with MCS are facing?
Even before I met them,
Even before I got to know Sophia, even I didn't really have
understanding
an understanding of how totally MCS can impact a person's life. And it was only through Sophia that I could understand, begin to understand.
Well, if somebody
If that was true for me, I can imagine that the average Canadian thinks this is something that can be handled like wearing a mask or buying more fans. Things of that nature. Somehow the public needs to be more educated.
Yes.
But having said that, I want to make it clear the burden of educating the public should not just fall on people with MCS. Medical people, government have a role in this.
Yes. Professor, many countries, including the United Kingdom, are currently debating whether to introduce MAiD. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about decisions they will make in light of what you've shared about people with MCS having to face often very difficult choices.
I go back to my earlier statement. Unless and until all people with disabilities, including those with MCS, have access to safe, affordable housing and the related supports they need. Legalizing MAiD amounts to a eugenics program. I understand that strong language, but I believe it's accurate language.
Professor, I wonder what the counter argument would be. I'm sure you've thought about it, and would you like to share what you think it is and what your thoughts may be on that?
The counter argument, I'm going to generalize. It's all about autonomy, and it boils down to it's my body, it's my choice. The major weakness of the argument is, well, two things. First of all, it only looks at this notion of autonomy, quote unquote. I'm autonomy. Without considering all the factors that impacts a person's autonomy. Going back to Sophia, if she could have made an autonomous choice to live in a safe environment, if that was made possible for her, I highly doubt she would have chosen MAiD. The second thing, the autonomy argument, fails to consider how one person's autonomy impacts the rest of society. And there's always an impact. No person is an island.
As we wrap up this conversation, it seems like the healthcare provider, physicians, clinicians have a lot of responsibility in differentiating what is the cause of illness. Is it the illness or is it the exposure to chemicals, fragrance that could be associated with housing? Often they're not able or willing to make that distinction. What do you think about that, Professor?
I think that's discriminatory, especially in this era of MAiD. Clinicians have an ethical duty, clinicians, to work harder to properly diagnose those factors.
Would you like to share anything with listeners who may be in a similar situation to Sophia, facing challenging housing, exposure to chemicals, and maybe considering MAiD?
I understand your despair. I'm not in that exact situation, but I live in Alberta, where people with disabilities are currently facing an existential threat to our income being cut, and it's all being focused on a work fair program. I don't know what it's like to be living with MCS. I do know what it's like to have to fight for your survival. Please keep fighting. Because that's our only hope of having anything change.
Thanks for listening to the Chemical Sensitivity Podcast. Here's my conversation with a woman in Toronto who lives with severe MCS. She reflects on her friendship with Sophia, a woman with the MCS who had MAiD at age 51 in 2022. Thanks for joining me, and would you like to share anything about yourself for listeners?
Yes, I'd like to say that I, as a person that has lived with debilitating multiple chemical sensitivity for a couple of decades, it is very challenging living in a world that is scent obsessed. It has become more challenging over the years as fragrance products become more commonplace.
Yeah.
I would say that it is particularly challenging for individuals needing to find housing. Dealing with a combination of having enough financial stability to find anything, substandard housing, food insecurity, all of the things that go with people that have disability, particularly if you're single, and then this illness not being understood.
How has living with MCS shaped your views on medical assistance in dying and MAiD?
Well, I have to say that nobody would choose to use MAiD if they could find safe housing. But there is no protection that exists for people that have this illness. There's a lack of an appropriate legal forum. So people with MCS really can't access any justice. The tribunals are structured in such a way that it takes years to even have whatever our issues are, our struggles, go through the proper channels. And so that delays being able to effectively be protected in building structures. Most homes just simply don't meet the needs of people with MCS, particularly if people end up having to be in a multi-unit building. Fragrances and cigarette smoke, plug-ins and the like infiltrate to the units, and it's beyond challenging for anybody having to live in this situation. Imagine a life where you just cannot escape. You can't have any safe access when you're outdoors trying to go into buildings, and then you go home and again you are bombarded with chemicals and fragrances that are making you very sick.
Are these issues that you've had to live with personally?
It's not as bad where I am now, but I did live in a building where I was on the main floor. So there was an apartment above and below, and I could smell everything from both of those units. Even I could tell the difference when the person below was using their shampoo or their soap. Fragrance transferred that much. And I know I have friends with multiple chemical sensitivity that dealt with it for years, trying to get help with changing their living situation because they were living in substandard housing and they were not able to afford to move out of that building. And trying to make a building like that safe is beyond challenging.
To what extent do you believe requests for medical assistance in dying among people with MCS are driven by the condition itself versus barriers such as unsafe housing, financial insecurity, limited healthcare access, and a lack of accommodation?
It's sort of hard to separate the two, because if people could have the housing that's needed, an understanding of how to accommodate people with this illness, then, and there was actually safe housing, of course people would choose to continue living. But when people are forced into situations where they get no relief, there is no recourse for, trying to make things better. They've tried for a number of years to have a better living condition to no avail. Then eventually, hope is lost. And at that point, people may seek MAiD again, as I say, not because they choose to, but really because their life is such misery that they feel that there is no other option.
In times when you were in different housing, did you consider MAiD for yourself?
No, I've never considered it. But at this point in my life, I'm in my 70s, I would consider it. Not that I want to again, but if I had to go into assisted living, there is no place that exists that would be safe for individuals that have this illness. So the idea of just being in my own room and never able to escape fragrance on workers coming in, scented laundry products, a lot of these places have scent in the venting systems, scented cleaning products. It just would not be an option for the level of suffering that I would have to endure. I wouldn't even consider it. We desperately need to be understood and have building structures that we can live in without being ill.
Have you known people who have opted for MAiD, people with MCS?
Yes, I knew somebody personally, and that person lived in a substandard multi-unit building, and she tried for a number of years to have her unit made safe. There was a scent coming in. It was such a leaky building. So she suffered daily from all kinds of fragrance contamination infiltrating her unit. She sought legal help, and at some point they did try to seal her building, ended up making things worse because the person doing the work really wasn't qualified to understand the way the air movement was working in the building. And after having it go worse for her after this effort, she chose MAiD.
Are you referring to Sophia?
Yes, I am. We had an online friendship for a long time.
Do you think many other people are in similar situations?
Many. Too many to count. A lot of people are living out of vans or cars or tents. So if they can't find safe housing, some people are forced into these situations that the average person wouldn't dream of. And again, not because they want to, because there simply isn't anywhere else to go.
Do you think we will see more people with MCS seeking MAiD in Canada and beyond?
I'm sad to say, I really do feel that is exactly what's going to happen. There is a recognition of this as a disability in many countries around the globe, but it's a very, very difficult legislation to implement. So people can recognize it as a disability, but it's rarely enforced.
When you think of your future, how do things look for you?
I live alone. I don't have children. If I lose my ability to take care of myself, there is no safe place for me to go. I like to think of myself as somebody who is a hopeful person, but given the circumstances, it's grim. It's hard to be hopeful.
Are you glad that MAiD is an option?
Absolutely, I am. And not that I feel that it is a substitute for living well. It's a sad option, in my opinion, but I am glad that it's there because I and many others with my illness absolutely could not live in buildings where we are being inundated with fragrances and cleaning chemicals and plug-ins all day long. It would be absolute torture. Giving the two alternatives, I would have to choose MAiD, but that, again, shouldn't have to be our choice.
What do you think needs to change?
Support services or policy changes would make the greatest difference. Even just being believed, it's a very difficult illness to have because if people can't see it, they don't want to believe that it's real. We have fallen through the cracks, sadly. Yeah. And it's every step of the way, it's been a fight.
You've been listening to the Chemical Sensitivity Podcast. I'm the host and podcast creator, Aaron Goodman. The Chemical Sensitivity Podcast is by and for the MCS community. The podcast is generously supported by the Marilyn Brockman Hoffman Foundation and listeners like you. If you wish to support the podcast, please visit listen.chemicalsensitivitypodcast.org, and your support will help us continue making the podcast available and creating greater awareness about MCS. To learn more about the Chemical Sensitivity Podcast, please follow the podcast on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok. And you can reach me at aaron@chemicalsensitivitypodcast.org. Thanks for listening. The Chemical Sensitivity Podcast and its associated website are the work of Aaron Goodman, made possible with funds from the Marilyn Brockman-Hoffman Foundation, supporting efforts to educate and inform physicians, scientists, and the public about multiple chemical sensitivity. The content, opinions, findings, statements, and recommendations expressed in this Chemical Sensitivity Podcast and associated website do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of its sponsors.